I'm working on, all right, I'm not the best with technology, but got it going live.
Okay.
I'm not the best in the sense of like,
As long as it says live right there.
as long as it says live. All right, you guys, I know we talked about it. We're going to try to get a little extra time tonight. So if you want to find your seat, grab the snacks, grab some water, grab a seat. We're going to get started. There will be a bit that we're going to be using this board tonight. So just keep that in mind. All right. Okay, I want to kind of get an idea about everyone in the room, get a good feel. So we're live streaming it over here. If you guys are interested, I've been uploading for the past, 2 years now to the YouTube channel of the live. Well, YouTube's is new. I've been live streaming on Facebook. That took me a little while. Got my feet underneath me, live streaming, and then now I am putting it on YouTube. So if you guys want to go back and watch any of those videos, you guys can. Just search Northshore REIA on there. All right, so I want to get a feel for who all is in the room. But tell me here, raise your hand if you are a wholesaler, someone who lives. Okay, so we got a handful in here. Okay, can you raise your hand if you are a realtor? Can you raise your hand? All right, another good bit. Okay, and then anyone here in property management? Okay. No, look, hey, that's all good. So what I want to do is. So for some reason, the topic of how to effectively market properties to investors has come up pretty frequently. Some of it's come up because just receiving properties, whether they've been from realtors, whether they've been from wholesalers, there's a level that part of the heart behind this is that the goal is to raise the tide in our community because a raising tide lifts all boats, right? So at any point, if I can help someone, for example, market these properties better so that they can get investors to actually click on the property, it'll help more of us find more properties to buy, right? And then, hey, for those of us who flip, so there's times that we wholesale too, right? Whenever we wholesale, hey, I want to do it effectively so that we can have more, have more success doing that. So we're going to break down residential for the majority of the time, and then we're going to go into commercial, some land development, some things like that. I just don't want to focus a whole lot of time on that too much because I know residential is what 90% of people do, right? So to give you guys an idea, I want to kind of teach some heart behind what gets buyers to stop and click, to click on a deal, to read more. What gets buyers to kind of pick up the phone and call, or whatever that may be. I want to give some heart behind it. I also want to give some do's and don'ts behind the marketing side of stuff, but I'm going to focus on what makes something a good deal so that you can then market it accordingly. Because that's what we're looking for, right? Buyers are looking for good deals. If you're a buyer looking for bad deals, I'm not going to say call me, because I can sell you my whole portfolio at a really great price. But isn't that the joke? At the right price you can buy it, right? So how do you know? How do you know it's not a bad deal and things like that? So that's kind of going to be the heart tonight. Is I want to kind of give you some of those parameters, and then from there I want to give you some do's and don'ts on the marketing side. And again, I'm going to start with residential, and I'm going to start with flipping. So, and I'm a believer that if you can successfully market, you can do so much more business. If my business budget, let's just say the dollars in the business account was getting low and I was starting to get scrappy, I would spend money on marketing. And I would do things that were in a marketing nature. That's me personally. I'm a huge fan of going out and acquiring business and things along those lines. And I believe at the end of the day, how many times have you guys ever come across for example, really great companies who you know nothing about because they don't spend time marketing. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like owner-operators who's like a fantastic contractor, but they're not really good at marketing their services, and so they're like, you know, the ninth wonder of the world, and no one knows about it. So marketing is going to be the key to get you in front of more people. Then there's also level 2. The marketing is going to be the difference between whether someone takes you serious sometimes as well, right? So there's a level that all of that plays into it. So, and in this new generation of technology, of doing business, marketing is really key to get, you know, why are there things called brands? Why are there things called, you know, marketing jobs are now through the roof. Marketing firm. I've got a niece. Some of you guys know I have a 16-year-old niece who I've been trying to get into thinking about things that school doesn't teach her. And you know, finding out what she wants to do for a living. She either wants to be an OBGYN that specializes in fertility, or she wants to do a marketing firm for political campaigns. I was like,
It's close.
we have to, yeah. I was like, probably go to the same school. You know, like what do you, I was like, okay. Like, very interesting. When we had that, I was like, tell me more. Like, I don't get this. But that's the reality. Marketing is so huge, and social media plays a big role to it. A lot of things along those lines. So, let's go ahead and jump on to the idea of flips. How many of you guys have heard of the idea of MAO, M-A-O, Maximum Allowable Offer? Just a few of you guys. You probably know it, you just didn't know what it was called, so I'm going to give you a pass. So this is that 70% rule, right? So if the idea of MAO is that you need to buy it with a 30% discount, you're going to start at that 70% range and then work your way down. And you guys are now saying, oh yeah, I knew that, just didn't know what it's called. So if I'm going to start off at 70%, if a house is worth, let's say a house is fixed up is worth 100. Now you're probably like, what type of house is that? No, that's not the point. But if it was fixed up and it was worth 100, just for easy numbers, what's going to be our starting point with a 30% discount? Easy numbers, right? 70,000. Okay, so for maximum allowable offer, you're starting immediately at 70% of its value. If it was fixed up, then the question becomes, how much is it going to take to get it fixed up? So, let's just go ahead and say it's going to take 20 in repairs to fix it up. Let's just call that it needs flooring, it needs paint, and it needs an AC. Let's call that on a, what do you say, 1,600 square foot house is fair. So, let's just say that's kind of your repairs for that, you know, depending on what that looks like. So you're now at 50,000, right? So this right here is going to be someone's maximum allowable offer. They're going to run by this theory, and I'm going to break down the theory in a second. But if you're a wholesaler, you then have to build your fee into here. So say you want to make 5,000, say you want to make 10,000, let's just say 5. So a $5,000 wholesale fee, then you're going to be down at 45, right? So this is, some of you guys, we're going to get into some deeper things, but let's just say, let's start with this premise. You're first going to go as a wholesaler, you've got to then get the property under contract at $45,000. So this is going to be a $100,000 house that needs just some cosmetic work. Do you see that getting it at a $45,000, you know, at $45,000, you might need to look at finding that property. Is this a hard property to find today? Yeah? If you're a buyer, say amen, because there's not many of these out there. But how can people find these? Again, that's another conversation about how do you find these deals. I'm going to break down a deal. We did a deal just like this recently here on the Northshore. So the idea of it is you've got to get it at a discount if you're going to flip it. On a flip, the reason right here for this 30%, what's going to be, so we've got our purchase price accounted for, and then we've got our repairs accounted for. What is going to go in this round? What's this 30% for? Does anyone know?
Profit.
Commissions, profit, I'm glad someone's thinking about getting paid. What was that?
Closing costs.
Closing costs.
Any unforeseen costs.
Carrying costs.
And then here's a big one people often forget, holding cost. So closing cost, title company, you got real estate commissions, those are big. And then the profit. So the holding cost is something that people often discount because for any of you guys who've done a flip, what can make or break your flip is when it goes long, right? Because then those property taxes, then you've got the utility bills, maybe you have HOA fees, that like can really dive into it. Maybe it's the cost of the money that you have to do the loan. A lot of our deals have we use private lenders, and so that's going to dig into our profit is if we hold it longer, because it's the money may be interest, monthly interest. It may be basically, hey, this is how much we pay if we do the deal in 6 months, and then this is what we're going to pay if we do it in 9 months. Sometimes we have those contingencies. Sometimes we have bonuses if we do it early, just stuff like that. So what's really important here is, so how do you, if this is a general rule of thumb, how many of you guys who flip, how many of you guys use this rule of thumb? Any of you guys who buy wholesale deals, do you use this rule of thumb? Okay, so a lot of people use this rule of thumb when they're flipping, but then you have some flippers who actually don't go by a 30% rule. What they do is they actually break them all down. Now, different buyers come in different, let's call them flavors, different strokes for different folks, whatever. Because, for example, if you're going to list your own properties and you're not going to hire a real estate agent, what happens to this? The real estate commissions. You're getting a savings there because you're only having to pay half of them, right? So then that can then turn into more of a profit, right? Okay. For example, on the repair side, if you're doing the repairs yourself, that's really great. But what if you have to hire out? What if you have to hire a GC, general contractor, and things along those lines? So, and I have some notes here because I want to make sure that I give you guys all my thoughts. But one of the biggest things is this is not always a deal for everyone. Some of the flippers are going to say, no, I'm not good with it being a 30% general buffer. They're going to say, no, I need to outline specifically. For example, sometimes it's, I'm not getting out of bed unless it's $25,000 or more. Okay? I don't care what price range the property is. I don't know if any of you guys like that, but we have that on our flips. We're not doing a flip unless it reaches a certain criteria, and I absolutely have buyers who are not interested unless it's a certain price point because at the end of the day, it's just not worth all the work. Moving the money, doing the work, unless it's a certain level of a profit line. Some of the other things is, again, for example, if you have contractors and your numbers start getting, thin, how can you market this to someone who's a contractor? Say it's like, hey, look, I've got a property that has they're going to make up their money because they can get this $20,000, which this $20,000 is going to be a conservative. Like basically, if you had to hire it out, which most people are going to hire it out, okay? Because you want to plan for this. You want this to be expensive, and you want this to be low. For example, if the comps are 100,000, 103, 105, I'm not going to say, oh, it's worth 105. Because I'm going to say, hey, I want you to find land gap on the back end, right? And then if I get bids that are like, 12, 17, and 20, I'm going to go with the 20. Now, I want them to be reputable companies. I'm not going to use a guy who knows nothing, handyman who's always going to shoot low, and you're actually going to worry if it's not going to be exactly done right. And I'm not saying go get the quote from the highest guy in town just to figure out. But the reality is this is where you want extra cushion if things go wrong. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah, to that point, contingency and risk, who is carrying, who is holding that contingency and risk, in what area of the budget? right?
No, look, absolutely. So when it comes to marketing a flip, I'm gonna market a few things. So if a property needs, a lot of times when you flip, you look at what's going on in that neighborhood. For example, there's a property that I looked at, let's call it a $300,000 neighborhood in St. Tony Parish that I've dealt with 2 properties, and it's maybe a 30 house neighborhood. And so about 9 months before, I was familiar with the property there, and I got outbid, someone with someone. Anyway, there was a family member who was supposed to move in, but they ended up flipping it. So then when I went to go look at comps, I said, he didn't live in that thing, that son of a gun, he flipped it, you know. And so I was like, okay, well, the guy did HGTV level flip. I'm talking all this stuff. So I'm buying this, I'm putting an offer to buy this house here, and that's one of my comps. I knew what it looked like before, right? So I knew that he put brand new bathrooms, brand new kitchens, all of that, because it was a 1990s house, so you've got those gold fixtures and stuff, you know what I'm talking about, like, it's just outdated, like paints for mica countertops and stuff. So I'm looking at that. The guy ended up selling it for $305. I can't remember the price per square footage. Sold it for $305, and all the other comps were like $301, $302 with outdated bathrooms and kitchens. He left. So here's what. If I were looking at that, I'm like, that guy left $40,000 to $50,000 on the table, knowing what he did, right? So it's going to depend on the neighborhood what you need to do. So, for example, if there's a property that needs cosmetics, it needs flooring and it needs paint, new fixtures, things like that. It doesn't need a full gut. It doesn't need, a lot of the bones and the mechanicals are good, but it needs that cosmetic rehab. And it's something that can be tackled in a quick week or two, maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Those quick turnaround properties are huge on, like for us, we will chase those deals all day long, because if it's a property I have to gut down to the bones and redo, you lost me. Because honestly, Paul and I, we've done those, and Paul, 30 years of experience of being a contractor, it's like, look, we can do those, but those are my least favorite deals. Because then when the project is a lot longer. So something that's really important for buyers is, how long is this project going to take me? Is it going to take me 9 months to go through this? And do I have hurdles? So those are the things that are going to factor in. If you guys were here last month, Dave talked about 2 things. A lot of times, especially like the backers for our private money, they ask the question, what is my security? And do you guys remember the second one? There's a huge gold nugget drop last time. What is my security and what is my return? So what does that look like? Hey, my security, how do I know that this is going to be a good deal? What are those things that gives me that security that I know that I'm going to get in this deal and it's going, like, I'm not getting into a bad deal? Then secondly, what is my return? How can I get my money back? Okay? So a lot of times we have to answer that to our backers and our investors whenever we do these deals, because they're wanting to know, again, what is my security and what is my return? So for a flip, what is my security and what is my return? For example, this is $100,000, but let's say that there is an extra room. Call it an old den, call it whatever, but like it doesn't have a lot of, plausible use these days. Or, what's really common? Those formal dining rooms people don't use anymore. You guys know what I'm talking about? 1990s, we were all living in habit. Mom said, don't go in that room. Let's say you can turn that into a bedroom. Let's go ahead, you've already got the AC, the airflow in there, the air ducts. Let's say you can put a closet in there for $2,500. What would you say for a closet? Yeah, more or less $2,500 at tops, depending on the size. And then you got the window that works. Okay, but that's one of those things where, there's some potential there now, right? So you're looking at these options. When you're marketing a deal, one of the most common things I see is you don't want to shoot for the stars as far as all of the possibilities. Because I find that oftentimes I don't know what to call it other than HGTV syndrome, right? Like, it's like, oh, you can rip out every wall in the house. No, like, you can't, like, things like that are so impossible because it's
Open
like,
floor plan.
so many people are, you know, they get so big into, hey, what can you potentially do with the house? But if there's legitimate opportunities to add an additional bedrooms and things along those lines, so then, because if you can then raise this amount up, I mean, those things are huge. So I want to talk about some things with security. So how long will it take? Look, those quick renovations. I'm talking flooring. I'm talking fixtures. I'm talking paint. I'm talking, hey, the foundation is good. Oftentimes the roof or the AC is good. I'm talking you don't have to go and gut it. I'm talking kitchens and bathrooms can take longer, but sometimes that's still, you can still do some cosmetic work on those and still come out well. Those long projects, they're going to be a greater risk. One of the biggest things is for marking them is it in an in-demand school district? If you're investing in an area and if you do not know what the top school districts are, you're missing out on an opportunity to bring in some buyers. Because, for example, what I have found is those school districts, areas, houses in those areas actually do well even during economic downtimes. Because at least families say, hey, I won't go wrong putting my kids in this school district, right? Because, you know, family is going to become a huge priority when it comes to picking those things. So knowing those hot school districts, wherever you're marketing, is going to be key. There's many times whenever we market deals, we pit what the school district is, especially if it's a very favorable one, because there's some people who, they just flip in that school district. Okay? Look, if you look up the parish, you can find out what the boundary lines. There's maps that you can search for the schools. Okay, so days on the market. Days on the market, that's how long does this property take for it to go under contract? When the property, whenever I'm looking for those quick flips on the back end, I'm going to look, the areas that I'm comparing this property to, how long does it take those comparables to sell? Right now, many properties are selling like saying 0 days, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 or 5 days. If a property takes 60 to 90 days to sell, is that going to be a project that's going to sell quickly? No. So if you're one of the things that I can tell is if an area, you know, historically has low days on the market, I know that this is a good high in demand area, and I'm going to want that property as a buyer. Because I know that, hey, if I can get in there and do the work, people are going to want to buy in here. Maybe it's the location. It's usually a mix of the location, the school district, the flood zone, you know, some things like that. So if you have a property that's in a neighborhood, that's in an area that has great low days on the market, and you're trying to effectively get an investor interested, you say, hey, one of the things I'll do is I'll say, hey, on the back end, properties very similar to this one are selling for this much, you know, when they're fixed up, they're selling for this much per square footage, and they have low days on the market. Please see the examples below. Because, for example, if you can get this thing fixed up, and it, you know, you listen, it's only taking 2-3 days to go under contract, you're going to have a hard time answering your phone quick enough for the people wanting to buy. Because for those of you who are buyers, you guys know what I'm saying, right? We want those areas that people want to buy in. So another thing to learn is a sweet spot in your market for buyers. Now, we generally say that general sweet spot is $150,000 to $250,000 as the price point for the home to purchase it. Now, I'm talking like fixed up on the back end. So the reason why this is important is you can actually, so if you've got a realtor on your team, which you should have one on your team, because especially if you're going to be selling back end, or you are one yourself, knowing you can actually pull that data to see what the median, you know, price point of houses bought, like that, and kind of find out what those hot spots are. You know, what is that price range that everyone's generally buying in, the most amount of buyers are buying in. The reason why that's so important is, for example, if you have a $750,000 house that you are selling, you want to know how many buyers are buying in this price range. because that's going to equate to your days on the market. So, and let's go back to that logic. If your days on market take longer, what is that going to do to your holding cost? It's going to raise your price, right? So, I'm not saying don't get into those type of deals, but here's the thing is when you have some good things to pinpoint about your property, talk about them, because those are going to be items that are going to get people to go ahead and say, hey, I'm interested in this property. Hey, can I come see this property? Hey, I want to make an offer on this property. When you can pinpoint what is their security and what is their return. So, another thing is, sometimes, if you can, I recommend you want to share reputable contractors, like if they can give a bid on a property and show you. For example, if you've got, I've got a mentor of mine, Robert Reed. He, many of you guys know him. He's usually here and he talks shop a lot. He had a property not that long ago that had a horrible foundation issue. Like everyone in the neighborhood knew that that's the house that frowned because it had a bad foundation. So everyone knew about it. So when he renovated it, people were like, oh, everyone knows that's the bad. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to make it a selling feature. So when I go around to sell it, I fix the foundation. I'm going to say, hey, I have the newest foundation in the whole neighborhood. And it's a neighborhood that, for example, they didn't, their foundations weren't built. Maybe their foundations were predominantly built a certain way, and he has the updated, the better version of foundation now. That's a selling feature, right? For example, when everyone knew, when someone knows something about a property, for example, that house, whether it's a foundation issue, I'm not going to say if the house is haunted, because why is my mind going there?
We got rid of the
You know,
ghosts.
but we got rid of the ghosts. I can show you a video of the stage we did. But the idea is when you have something, so I like to call them quirky properties when it has something that sticks out. For example, something, it's easy to say a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house can be quirky because it's something that not everyone is wanting to buy. Or look, I flipped a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house one time. There's a very small pool of buyers for that. I'm talking house, not a condo, not, house. So there's not a lot of buyers for things like that. Those uniquely, very modern or unique style homes. You guys know what I'm talking about? Those type. Not a lot of people are into that type of stuff. Another thing that I call quirky is when a property has the worst layout. I walked one not that long ago. Geez, I can't tell me how many I walked this year, but I feel like they were coming up in the higher price points this year where I would walk the house and I would get lost. I'm like, wait, where am I? I'm about to GPS myself back to my truck because it's there was this one, I couldn't even draw it to you. It was literally such a poor layout that, it was just frustrating. So, especially in a higher price point, that property is going to take longer to sell, right? Because a lot of people are going to walk in and they're like, I literally don't know where I'm at in my house. Much less, imagine losing a kid in the house, right? Oh my God, where are you? But the reality is whenever we've gone into those properties, when they had horrible layouts, we've built out our budget to completely redo the layout because everyone knows that's the really boxed house, or maybe they saw pictures, or maybe they walked it before when it was previously for sale, or whatever it may be. We're going to completely renovate it, and then that be a feature. Hey, brand new layout on this house, or if you completely gut the house and redo it, everything is practically brand new in this house. Here's a list. Please see the detailed list of all the items that have been, renovated, repaired, fixed, all things like that. Because a lot of people, they're going to want the comfort of that. Okay, so that is going to be flips. I'm going to jump into rentals here real quick, and then I'm going to give you some do's and don'ts generally. But for flips, one of the biggest things that I see is you want to make sure that you are going to outline to people. I use very simple numbers with $100,000 here, but you want to outline to people as best as you can what the houses in that area fixed up could sell for. But you want to sell apples to apples. There's a whole other course that can be done on comps. But I've seen people, for example, I've seen people say, hey, there's a house like right down the street that, you know, just recently sold. I'm saying, okay, great, which one? And I looked at it, and we're in a single story house, and they're pointing to a 2-story house. I'm like, what? Like, that's not apples to apples. And I know we love, but the reality is you got to make sure that you're staying in those comparables, because otherwise you're just wishing and you're hoping here. So you want to make sure it's very similar, comparable homes, as apples to apples as you can compare them. Look, I've seen this on appraisals, and I've seen this on comparables that people have sent out. Look, I recently was looking at an appraisal for a duplex, and this duplex was probably built in the 60s, so older. The appraisal was comparing it to one that was built in 2015. I'm like, wait, how can you compare the two age-wise? Because you've got the falling apart, you know, shack over here that's going to need a lot of love and attention, and this one that's practically new construction. So one of the things is you can compare the two, but there needs to be a great reduction in if there's these plus and minuses, and that's when you want to be careful when you're getting into all those plus and minuses, because obviously people go to school to become appraisers and to work through those. So that's something that's really big, is there really is an art to that. I can get 10 of you guys in a room, give you one property and the same access, the same data, and if you're not pulling it properly. All right, so flips are pretty easy to sell because everyone wants to flip because everyone's names are Chip and Joanna, or that's like their alternative personality. Because everyone wants to do that right now, right? Whether they've bought properties before or not, many people are wanting to get into the flipping game right now, whether they're doing this full-time, part-time, or amateur hour. So, which is fine. I want to invite everyone to get into real estate. But so flips are really easy to sell right now. Rentals, though, how many of you guys have sold a rental to an investor during COVID? Okay. How many of you guys have attempted to? Does anyone want to answer that? Attempted to sell to? Look. So yeah, and you guys bought rentals during? It closed? Oh, excellent. Congrats, man. Good. So there's been a level, especially for rentals since COVID hit, that kind of people have been like, I don't know, especially in certain parishes, right? It's been a little bit more difficult to sell to investors, buy and hold properties. All right, so I want to break down this deal. All right, any questions so far?
I'm looking forward to hearing how you do a rental, because I'm struggling with a find that I don't think I have a flip, but I think I have a rental and how to price it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so again, I'm going to work through some of these numbers. This is a deal that we bought, I don't know, 2 months ago. All right, so we're getting 1075. My other business partner, Charlene, Paul's wife, is not here tonight because she's doing a fantastic job getting it rented in Slidell. So we're renting it for 1075. So so this is principal and interest. So we've got a private lender who's lending on this deal. So the principal and interest is $316.32. Let's see, $89.99. So this is hazard insurance. So I specifically chose a deal that had flood. So this is flood insurance. And then this here is taxes on the property. So, PITI, principals, interest, taxes, insurance, right? So this is a property that is leveraged. As you can see, that's expensive flood. $3,300 a year. Maybe you're like, why in the heck did she did that deal? I'm about to see a dud in the making. Watch. So, PITI, so rent minus this, we're looking at $301.06. You're like, and everyone says, oh, this property, this is my cash flow, right? How many of you guys, we've got gross rents. How many of you guys like this deal right here? Okay, we actually go ahead and we reduce 2 more things. I do 12% of this number and 8% of this number. So whatever the rent is of property, I'm going to use 12%, and 8% for my reserves. This is what I do, and so this one is 129, and this one is 86. So here we've got 172.06. This is what I call my net. Okay? 12% here. This right here is 12% is going to be for repairs. Okay? Now this property is fixed up going into rental. So 12%, and then 8% is for vacancy. 8% allows for 1 month vacancy a year, generally speaking. Because here's the thing is, I like to treat my rentals as business, and I want them to be self-sustaining. So whenever a repair happens, I don't want it to come out of my pocket. I want it to come out of the business's pocket. Does that make sense? So the 12% is what I'm putting aside for future repairs. Water heater goes out when it needs a new roof, a new AC, but you're like, $129 a pop, it'll take you a long time to buy a roof. I know, that's why we also do reserves elsewise. But, and then 8%, that's for vacancy. Because let's say it's not rented 1 month, we want to make sure that this stuff is covered. Does that make sense? So I'm personally a fan of breaking this down. All day long, people are going to say, oh, I make 3 or 106 on this property. A lot of times, those are the people who don't put money aside, and so whenever they need a new roof, they have to pull that $5,000 out of their personal pocket, not the business's pocket. Is that, you guys following with me here? Okay. So for those of you, you kind of got your idea here. We're at that 172. I promise you, I will remind you of it. So maybe you're like, why in the heck did this person do that? Like, why did you guys do that because of the flood insurance being so high? How many of you guys have seen flood insurance kill a deal before? There's only been 2 deals I really couldn't make happen, and they both were because of, and when I tell you, how many of you guys have done a creative, I'm trying to think, some of you guys have done really creative deals with me. Trust me, there's very few deals that I can't do. There were 2 of them that I had someone offer me to pay them to buy it, and I said no. Pay me to buy their property, and I said no. Wow. And it was flood insurance reasons. There was a repetitive risk. They had made multiple claims on the insurance, and it was raising at a percentage every year. Okay. How many of you guys, I should ask this, how many of you guys would do this deal? So what I want to show you is how to break these things down so that you can show people how they're going to make their money and how you can speak to some things. This is my terms on that deal. It's worth $115. I'm all in. Purchase and repairs for $40,000. 30-year loan at 5%, private money. Would you now do the deal with flood insurance at those rates? How many of you guys would do this deal? How many of you guys like that amount of equity? Okay. So, something that everyone likes to do is the BRRRR method. How many of you guys know the BRRRR method? Yeah, buy, you fix it up, so you rehab it, you rent it out, and then you refinance it. So let me break down what that would be. Generally, it's 70 to 80% is what the bank will, 70 to 80%. But let's just go low, right? We want to go conservatively. I'm notoriously conservative. It has probably cost me a deal or 2, but it also, I'd rather, miss out on a good deal than do a bad deal. So 70% of this equals $80,500. So let's just say that this is a 25-year deal at 4.5%. So your PITI is this. So for those of you, if you remember the last number, so if I go ahead and I redo that under that number, taking the place of the previously my principal was $316.32. Now we're going to plug in $447.45. Maybe you guys were like, I didn't know I was showing up for math class. I'll tell you this, it's never about the math, it's always about the money. I hated math in high school. It's like my favorite thing to do when it comes to investing, because I can tell you, I will chase down a deal all day long if it works out in the calculator. And I probably shouldn't talk about what I did do in high school. All right, so then we've got here is all number at the bottom. So then whenever we do that 12%, we do that 8%. So then, look at this. Every month, here's my net. Now that I leveraged, but what did I do? I pulled out all my money, right? I burned it. So, I'm afraid some people, when they don't really run their numbers, they then are in negative cash flow territory because they over leveraged. So if you're someone who likes BRRRR, I'm not saying BRRRR is a bad thing. Be careful because this same deal would hurt someone who would BRRRR it, right? So, for someone who's paying cash, way different deal, right? But just understand that BRRRR method, one, doesn't work on every deal. So how many guys...
You don't have to borrow 70%, you can borrow less.
You can borrow less, so that is one strategy. Maybe go do 50%, right? So if you see 70% of the 80,500, but let's do this. At 80,500, and we're still getting 1075 in rent, that is the 1.3% rule. Everyone knows the 1% rule, where a lot of people go off of that bigger pockets rule of thumb, which is, if you're all in, renovations, so the renovations and the purchase price just needs to be 1%. You need to collect at least 1% of that in rent. So if you're all in $100,000 purchase price and renovations, you need to get at least $1,000 in rent. You guys heard of this rule before? Everyone's trying to get that 2%, rule, but if you're looking more in this area, it's really common to get that 1 to 1.5% rule. So some people are just looking for that 1% rule. I didn't do all the math, but that was the 1075 minus the principal and interest, minus the hazard, minus the flood, minus the taxes, and this is that amount. And then I did the 12, the 8, and I got that net. You remember that? Okay. How many of you guys would do this deal? With that equity though, right? Okay.
I'd still make it work out so that I didn't have to reduce my reserves.
Okay, but still going on that BRRRR opportunity. It's a $115,000 house. If you pulled out this much is how much you pulled out, but you had this much into it, you just got, what was that? Yeah, 40,005. I was making sure I was going at the same point. Okay, so this is how much. So if you pulled out this much, minus some closing costs for the BRRRR, you're getting this much. You got your money back plus some additional money. But so understand that. I get why people want to pull their capital back out. They want to pull more. Let's go ahead and do this. It becomes an infinite return, and a lot of times, so you've got that 1075. Let's go ahead and take the flood out of the situation because that makes this deal a lot harsher. But do you see why we did the deal? Because we had a lot of equity and we had good terms on our loan. Do you guys understand that part? How many, so flood properties are very difficult to sell. So whenever you have that, you want to find out who is the best client for these properties. So a lot of times, whenever it is those flood properties, you may want to stay away from those people who are highly leveraged, or who are wanting to do those, pulling out 70% loan to value, who want to pull out those high numbers, or they're looking at going to the bank and pulling out things. You're going to want to look for those guys who pay cash and they don't go get leverage, or you want to go look for those guys who it's going to be critical that you get it at a great purchase price to make the flood work. Does that make sense? Any questions about that part? Because I know flood properties become very difficult to sell to other investors because it's almost like a deal breaker across the board. So if we pulled out the flood, because let's work with the similar numbers, and they went ahead and did the BRRRR. So you have this is your PI, principal and interest. You've got PI 99, that is insurance, that hazard insurance, and this is per month, right? Taxes. So this is that net, so we got 12, we got that 8, and so we've got 234, 32. So this was if you bird it, you'd be able to invest the money, pull your money back, and still make a good monthly net. How many of you guys, if this was about the flood, the flood changes the deal now, and this is with the $80,500 mortgage on the property, how many of you guys would do this deal as a rental? A lot more people, right? If you're putting in that amount. Most people are still going to think this is how much you're putting into it. You're getting every month, but when you actually break down that 12% vacancy, the 12% and the 8%. So I can go ahead and do cash on cash returns. I can go ahead and do cap rates and things along those lines, but I'm going to hold off on those on a second because I think I want to go to those. Well, let me do this. I'm going to show you guys the deal we did. 40,000 we have into it. We're getting it 1075. That is a 2.65% roll. Because we're 40,000 into this deal and we're getting 1075 in rent. For those of you who do the 1% roll, 2% roll. So for those of you who are like, you can't get a deal about this house in Slidell less than 2 months ago. Solve a big enough problem, you can get those deals. So how many of you guys would do this deal? Right? So now if we were to go down, so the biggest thing is the cash flow was hurt by flood insurance, right? Another thing that can hurt cash flow is HOAs. So for example, hey, low HOAs or no HOAs is a great selling point, or the flood zone is going to be a great selling point, especially to people who go after cash flow. I know investors who are willing to buy and hold properties who don't care about their cash flow. They just want the bills covered every month. Now, is that risky as hell? But it's what they want, right? I had a guy who's like, I'll buy a property in this area because eventually I want to move there. And so I'm just good if the bills are getting paid. And like, hey, if I'm breaking even. So you need to understand the criteria that you're kind of presenting the product to. For example, if I had a hammer and I wanted to sell it, if I go to Paul, who's been a contractor for 30 years, I'm going to be like, hey, Paul, 10 out of 10 contractors said they'd buy this thing. Here's the reviews on HomeDepot.com. You probably don't, I don't know. But I'm going to be going at it from a different point of view, right? This is how long, hey, these are the warranties it has. This is how long they tend to last. It's like made out of this type of quality. I'm going to go at this way, right? You mind my picking you, Linnell? No. Say Linnell, this is going to be your first hammer. I'll be like, hey, Linnell, this is a great hammer. This is one that people who are buying their first hammer most often buy. And it says so in our reviews online. You've got 4 out of 5 reviews online for this hammer. You see how I'm going and I'm catering it to my clientele? So for example, when people say investor special, yes, you're going at you're doing that broad swipe, but there are some words. Let's talk about the words that are overly used when marketing properties. Investor special, cash cow, motivated sellers, fixer-upper. Like, don't get me wrong, those words can help, but you know what it becomes? It becomes background noise that people just, it doesn't get people to click on the trigger like it used to. So you want to be careful from, there's a level that when a property is a great, like a high demand area, I'm going to go investors. So whenever I sell wholesale deals, I'm going to do it to flippers, I'm going to do it to buy and hold investors, I'm going to make it open. But I'm going to talk to them about the benefits. So if I know someone's a flipper, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to talk to them and say, hey, here's all these great attributes. I'm going to talk about the low days on market when they go to sell on the back end. I'm going to talk about the historical low rates of, mortgages right now and the interest rates and things like that. And then for a buy and hold investor, I'm going to go to them and say, hey, let's talk about how do you run your numbers on cash flow? Well, I don't know, it just sounds like a good deal. Well, hey, look, let me show you how this can be a great deal. Because if you can walk them through, did any of you guys just start saying, I wish I bought that deal? Like, as we walk through the numbers, how many of you guys are like, hey man, you're trying to think through some of your properties, you're starting to run through the numbers yourself? Imagine if someone doesn't run the numbers like some of these equations, you can really start to then show them how these can be a good return. What is my security and what is my return? You guys see how that kind of helps? All right, so generally I equate for a 40% expenses. So these are going to be insurance, taxes, and some general items like that. We included debt service on this one. Debt service on that one. Debt service is going to mean your private money, going to mean your normal loan. So 40% expenses. So first of all, I'm going to do 1075 times 12. So that's 12 months of rent. My annual rent on that property is going to be $12,900. 40% of this amount is going to be $5,160. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the cash on cash return. I've got $40,000 into this property. I'm going to go ahead and divide that by the 12.9. I spent $40,000, and in that year I'm going to get 12.9 back. So that's going to give you, comes out to 32225. That's a 32% cash on cash return. Cash on cash is basically when I spent that cash, how long will it take for me? You know, I'm going to work on how much am I going to get that return on that cash. A lot of times people are going to say, hey, how fast is my money getting to work? Bob, would you say that's a pretty good way, like how fast I'm getting my money to work? Analyzing these deals is going to be huge. And here's the deal is you have to understand, do you have an analytical buyer? Do you have someone who is, it just needs to check off this box, this box, this box? We've got institutional buyers who are like, here's 17 boxes. If it fits these, we will buy it every single time. Now, it's 17 boxes, but you know, we'll work with them on that degree. Cash on cash return. If you put $40,000 in the bank at the current rate that your savings account gives you, what's your cash on cash return going to be? Squat. You can't even go to the bathroom with that piece of paper. Like, it's horrible. But the reality, you know, CDs, things like that. So oftentimes, this is how we convert private money lenders when we do these equations with them. We call them destitute millionaires. They've got money sitting in the bank or in their retirement account that they're not, you know, really touching. And like they couldn't rent my 1075 a month house with the interest they're making, right? It's so minimal. You guys get what I'm getting at with that? The interest is so minimal where their money is sitting that I'm like, hey, man, that's a horrible, horrible return. What is my security and what is my return? I can oftentimes, when I can correlate what the security is and what the return is, I can oftentimes explain to people why things are a great deal. You guys kind of following along here? All right, let's go into some do's and don'ts before we tag into some other things. Would you guys do this deal on a cash on cash return if all you did was pick? So this includes debt service, but look at our you know cash on cash return for the year. We love it. So lessons learned here. What are some lessons learned that you guys picked up from these little things? What stands out? Oh no, seriously. What about, talk to me about the expenses. What killed the deal for some aspects? Flood insurance, right? In some aspects, depending on how the person is buying, the flood insurance killed the deal. You remember the negative 39? Very little wiggle room at the end of the month, more bills than money. So understand that flood insurance for certain types of buyers is going to be a deal killer. So, but understand, flood insurance can be, like a deal with flood insurance can be sold to certain types of buyers. Is that part clear? Okay. The other thing is leverage. Did leverage make a difference? Right? Between the cash flow and the returns and things along those lines? So understand when you've got cash buyers, when you've got And then when you've got people who are buying with loans or people who are buying and then they're going to go ahead and do the BRRRR method, understand that those things play a factor into it. All right, so security in return for rentals. Obviously, different folks like different strategies. I try not to market to a niche of buyers. For example, I'm not always looking for cash buyers who are only ever always going to use cash, in the meaning that, for example, I want them to buy the property with cash, but I'm okay if they go put a loan on it, right? They turn around and they do that BRRRR method where they put the loan to get their cash back. Why? Because they can buy from me again in like 6 months, or whatever their seasoning period is. I'm okay with they do those things. I'm okay if someone who buys it, with private money with a loan, as long as I understand these different buyers, I can sell them different products. And I know that not every single one of you guys, I could have one deal, but it may not work for all of you. But if I know how to make it work for some of you, am I going to get a deal sold? And is that what our goal is? To get a deal sold? Or to sell a property that people want to buy? And so generally speaking, you want to go after properties that have the most amount of renters and that have the most amount of buyers who'd be interested in it, right? Because those are the type of properties, the more options you have, the less, for example, if you only had 3 people who would be interested in that property, you got to work really hard to make the deal happen. But if you had 30, different deal, right? And any of you guys who are realtors right now, how many guys have been selling some property right now as realtors? Anyone in here been selling any? Okay. How many of you guys have gotten multiple offers on some of your deals lately? Like, it's so common these days, right? Isn't it so much easier when you have multiple offers? Love it, right? So actually, most of our wholesale deals have we get multiple offers on them, and it really changes the opportunity there. It's not that I'm trying to drive up the price or anything like that, but what it does is it gives me more opportunities to get the deal closed, and that is huge. That is actually key to success a lot of times, is when you have more opportunities. So you want to make sure to get the multiple amount of people who will buy this property, but specifically who will also rent it. Is school districts are huge for rentals. You want to make sure location. For example, if you've got a property that's on a major highway, how are you going to, and you've got a house with 4 bedrooms, presumably family, do you think that that's going to be something that a lot of families are going to want to rent on? No. So you've got to make sure that you're not buying quirky properties, or if you are, find solutions for those quirks. Redo the layout of the house, or whatever those situations may be. Another quirk is, for example, say you're somewhere rural. Rural properties can also be quirky because, first of all, how many people want to rent somewhere that's 35 miles outside of town? Or what if it has 5 acres and they don't want the acreage? Who's going to keep up that mess? Okay, that's another topic. But the reality is that you want to make sure when you're building out these rental portfolios, I often recommend, be mindful of where it's quirky. Now, don't get me wrong. I've flipped 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Those are some things. Most people are looking for that 3 bedroom, 2 bath around a certain square footage. I've seen 3 bedroom, 2 baths at 900 square feet. Don't ask me how. But it's so small, guess what happens? Many times people come in and they say, need a little bit more room. Me and all my crap that I have, right? Same thing with 3 bedroom, 1 bathrooms, right? 4 bedroom. There's a 4 bedroom, 1 bath that I walked down long ago, and I'm like, there's no way in heck we're going to sell this thing, because the mom does not want to share with everyone in the house that same bathroom, right? But if you can improve the opportunity, that's huge. All right, lastly, some do's and some don'ts. How long is it going to take to renovate? One last thing is, how long is it going to take to renovate it for it to be rent ready? So if they have rentals are really fast. So right now, Zillow is starting to rearrange. How many of you guys seen that? Zillow is starting to rearrange their rental platform where they're going to charge on a weekly basis and things like that to post a rental for sale. That very well may drive a lot of rentals on the MLS these days, because not everyone uses a realtor in the MLS to rent properties. To be frank, we use Marketplace a lot of times. That's where I think we've got the tenant that's being rented to tonight from. But on the MLS, you can see how long it takes to rent a property. So if it has low days on market, great, another great factor to market. And another thing too is that if it doesn't take long to get it rent ready, that's going to be huge. Another thing you need to be mindful is if it takes a long time to renovate this rental property, keep that in mind because some investors are not going to want to do a major renovation on a rental property because that's a lot of money that they have to put out, and then especially if they're not the type to go get a loan on the back end. Does that make sense? It's going to take them a long time to start making money. All right, do's and don'ts. All right, how many of you guys ever come across a property that doesn't have enough equity to really be a flip, and it's not really the type of property for a rental? So I love these properties when they have maybe enough equity, but maybe just not enough for a flip. These are great for live-in flips. I'm currently on the tail end of a live-in flip. I bought a property with equity, and I've lived in it while I've renovated it, and then I will be selling it. That's one version of a house hack that I do. I know that there's house hacks where you can have rentals as well, but it's one that I'm going to enjoy the tax-free gains on the back end when I sell it. So this is great because it doesn't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur. It could just be a normal citizen. A normal citizen who's frugal or who's money conscious or who just wants to have equity day one. So that can broaden your buyer pool, right? I can tell you this, for any of you guys who are realtors, maybe you've seen this, but people are more than willing to buy a house that needs paint job or carpet or just cosmetic stuff done because thank you HGTV, they now all are Chip and Joanna is their second name. So point that to them. Say, hey, if you're looking to live in a house and renovate while you're in here, equity day one. Hey, did you know that if you live in a house for a few years and you renovate it, on the back end you've increased the value. You can go get a new loan, or you can take out a line of credit, or you can sell it in 2 out of 5 years if you've lived in it. Thank you to Section 121 of the IRS code. That's tax-free, up to $250,000 if you're an individual, $500,000 if you're a couple. I'm like, who wants to get married and we go find a property that great? No, I'm just kidding. But the reality is, you see how education then starts making, how many of you guys are like, whoa, now I'm thinking about a live-in flip? And you guys like, so education goes a huge way to help selling something because when you have tools like that, for example, what if you made a flyer that talked about the IRS that, you don't have to give them printouts of Section 121. I mean, I'm going to say read it, like read it. Seriously, read it. It's good. You can print it off their website, Section 121. But I'm not going to say give that to them, but I'm going to say, hey, maybe make a flyer that talks about, did you know that if you're going to look to live in this for a little while, you can renovate it and you can flip it. Because a lot of people, they didn't know that they're not going to pay taxes. And trust me, when you start making money, taxes are why you hire Bob, because it becomes the bane of your existence. So I would showcase, so some of the things you do want to do is you do want to educate people in ways that they can make a great return or have a great investment. You want to showcase the potential ways to improve the property. For example, when you're walking in that formal dining room, you want to say, hey, based on XYZ, based on code, and you can show them how you did your homework or whatever you may say look, I've gotten a bid for what it would cost to convert this to a bedroom. It would cost X amount. And look, instead of a house selling for $100 a square foot, if you successfully converted this to a bedroom, it could now be selling for $115 a square foot. Is that a worthwhile? Do you think that would be worthwhile for you and what you're planning to do? So now, you see how you can add some value to them? So understand when a property is quirky. Again, so one of them I had it was the biggest house in the neighborhood. Okay, so Slidell. It's anyone familiar with Military Road in Slidell? So there's a neighborhood there that has all these mixed-use houses, like trailers and all that stuff on it, but then regular houses. It was a 3,000 plus square foot house in a neighborhood where new construction has 1,600, right? So biggest house in the neighborhood by far. And so they didn't have a lot of comps. And so when you're the biggest house, that's a really, I call that a quirky factor. Do you guys get what I'm saying by quirky, those little odd things? Anyway, but I was, there was a problem, so I was open to, looking at solving it and making offers. But when everyone was pulling comps, they pulled from across the street in like Turtle Creek and Crossgates. And so when I tell you the price range difference, it's like $150,000 is the price range difference in the houses. And so you can't cross that major street, go into a whole new neighborhood and try to compare that. But it was the only thing that made sense size-wise. And so we almost made the deal happen, and I joked that my tagline for the property was going to be, when you have a champagne, taste but a beer budget, this is the house for you, because we're going to be able to offer it for a low amount, and it was going to be a big house in a great part of town, but for the lower end price. Little things like that, right? You want to share comps that are reasonable. Again, you don't want to share those comps. For example, a 2-story house versus a 1-story house. And you don't want to do a stretch. For example, go and take a new construction and compare it to a 1970s house. And you don't want to leave the neighborhood and just really be reaching, into different things like that. Talk about the speed of the project if it's there. Because I'm telling you, when it comes to a return, speed actually is a factor in deciding how well you did on the project. So a lot of times whenever we flip deals to other investors, those times we do wholesale, we aim to take 20 to 50 pictures. We'll also do a very in-detail video. And so, for example, I'm not going to showcase this room. I'm going to find something wrong, and I'm going to take pictures of it because I'm not trying to hide anything. So, for example, whatever that looks like. Maybe there is whatever those issues may, for example, some water damage on a cabinet in the bathroom that's going to need to be replaced. I'm going to include, I want the person to feel way too intimate with the house. I just want to include all that because that's something you don't want to do. You don't want to hide anything. You don't want, I had a friend recently tell me that they were buying a property that had a refrigerator on 2 pieces of plywood out in the yard, and they were like, in the middle of due diligence, hey, what's this? And so they move it out of the way, and what did they find underneath it? A busted pipe that was like patch job, and they were kind of like, what was this, right? So you don't want to hide anything. So another thing is, whenever we talk about properties, we want to share details. I'm talking details, not 30,000 square feet, but details as much as possible on what makes this a good deal. For example, if you're talking about those live and flips, give them examples of Section 121, or give them a good contact for a CPA to talk about it, or something to go to their CPA to talk about. You want to highlight the school district, or because those are one of those things that are going to be really helpful. Highlight the low days on markets for similar properties, and you want to share how fast something rents. Share comps with people, like addresses and as much examples as you can give them. You want to highlight the return people can get. Realtors, if you work with short sales, the very first property I ever bought was a short sale, which was baptism by fire, because it was like 6 months to buy this property, and I was pulling my hair out by the end of it. I swear it wasn't going to work. And we're in the middle of a short sale right now that has been past 6 months, because that is just the ludicrous nature we're in right now. So if you have short sales are a great opportunity if someone maybe buys onesies and twosies, or who has the patience to wait for a deal. Because, for example, some mom and pops who might only buy one deal a year, they're willing to have the patience to get the discount. Especially right now, because deals are hard to find. All right, REOs, real estate owned properties by the bank. This is a fantastic opportunity if you are a realtor who are wanting to sell to investors. Go pinpoint these properties, because so many times some investors aren't scrolling through the MLS looking for deals, or they're overlooking your daily automated emails. I'm sorry, but I get them and I overlook them too. I'm just trying to stay away from 1,000 emails in my email, okay? But the reality is say you see something and you're like, hey, this is a really good deal because, for example, it's listed at this, and you look at the disclosure, you see what's going on, you're like, you know what? Again, you see that extra bedroom, or you say, hey, this is a really great price for that neighborhood, and you can go present to someone. Say you know an investor who wants to live in a house and fix it up. I'm not kidding, those are really great buyers, because the owner occupants often get a 30-day window on those real estate owned properties, say like auction.com, HUD-Zoo, and like different ones like that. So you can say, hey, you get a leg up before all the other investors start coming in because you're going to be an owner occupant. So that is a great thing to showcase, right? All right, some things to not do. Let me go ahead and say this. I'm going to go ahead on a limb and say there's probably less than 2 flip phones in this room. Maybe less than 1. Because most people don't have flip phones these days. They have great, you're hiding yours, okay. They have great technology in their pocket. These days, these phones are fantastic, so there should be no excuse for horrible pictures. How many of you guys have seen them? They're like super blurry, things like that. I mean, there's like accounts on social media that go over the horrible pictures of like the person asleep in the bed while they're taking the picture and just, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying, okay, professionally, you should consider hiring someone to take pictures. But then also the 2 guys, utilize the technology in your that's in your pocket, take good pictures, and make sure they're not the blurred kind and they're not, turn them sideways for all of us. Don't use bad comps. Again, I explained some. Showcase those. I had someone tell me, it said investor special. Oh my gosh, I wanted to print this up and bring it, but then I decided against it. Investor special. And there's only so many like characters you can use, right? You know what they wanted to tell me about? That there's a pear tree, an orange tree. And I'm like, unless I'm doing like an orange grove, I don't need to know. Like, unless it's a source of income, you just wasted, the level, whatever that looks like. But I don't need to know about the fig tree in the back because that is not something that adheres to me, okay? Because that didn't help me with my security or my return. Again, unless it is an orchard and I'm like, and you're telling me that there's 15 rows of fig trees, 20 rows of, or unless you're like, well, no, I'm not going to go into that. Don't hide bad issues. Like, don't skirt around them. I actually love immediately talking about them because that helps people understand that I'm not looking to sell them a bad deal. Don't overuse the words fixer-upper, investor special, motivated sellers, because again, a lot of times just because there's a discount on a property doesn't mean the numbers work. Let me say that louder for people now. Just because there's a discount on the property doesn't mean the numbers work. So a lot of times they call me like, hey, this price just got discounted. Are you interested? They said, hey, $20,000, take it off. We're doing whatever it is to sell this property. I said, great, what makes the numbers work? I don't know. Like $20,000 off. I'm like,
I'll give him $1.
okay, but here's the thing though. A lot of people think investors lowball. Just, hey, I'm going to take that complete low offer. But the reality is a lot of people don't know how to run the numbers I ran. A lot of people don't know how to run those numbers. There's an app called 10B2I. So 10, the letter B, and then 2 I's. It's a financial calculator. How many of you guys know of this? Okay, if you don't know how to use these, I really want to encourage you. I eventually want to do a class where we teach you guys how to use them. A great book on it is Invest in Debt by Jimmy Napier. So I also have the Hewlett Packard version. It's like the Texas Instruments. Basically, I can figure out the balance of a mortgage with it. That's how I do my owner finance deals, my seller financing deals, and I can figure out what my return is. The app is like $5.99, and it's probably one of the most used apps on my phone. It took me forever. I probably had it on there for 6 to 12 months before I used it frequently because I didn't know how to use it. So it is one of those things that, like, again, it's not about the math, it's about the money. Because I can't tell you how many times I've won over sellers with owner financing, or I got private lenders to lend to me because I could show them the return that they're getting. Okay? So understanding how to do those things is critical. And a lot of times I tell people, I'm not looking for properties and I'm not looking for cheap properties. I'm looking for a problem I can solve. A property that needs a lot of work, someone who's losing their property to foreclosure, a landlord who is just completely done with COVID, with vacancies, with the way that the tenant tears up their property. I'm looking for someone who inherited a property and they don't want it anymore. I'm looking for someone in the commercial realm who is done being an operator, who just hates the day-to-day and wants to sell to someone so they can take over the day-to-day. Whatever that looks like. Don't give minimal data or insufficient data. The more you share, even if buyers run their own data, it is helpful. I have an email in my inbox that is a screenshot of Zillow, and it said, this property is for sale. And it's from, a wholesaler. And I said, but how much? What's your phone number? It was so bare minimum, and I'm like, bro, you didn't even create that on WordArt. That's like there was no extra effort, but like a screenshot. So here's one of those things is, you want to make sure that you provide a lot of information. If any of you guys have ever received our deals, we'll have a ton of information, a ton of pictures, a ton of videos, the comps, the rental comps. We'll have school zones, flood zone, all that information on there. And then another thing too, guys, is wholesalers, you're not selling houses, you're selling contracts. So you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself, because you want to make sure you're doing things legally. So you do not have a house for sale, you have a contract, you have an opportunity for sale. You want to make sure that you're not acting like a realtor, especially if you're not licensed. So there's some things that, there are often times if I see that, I'm going to send a message and say, hey, I just want to make sure that you're not sending yourself up a creek without a paddle by doing this. If you don't know why I just said that statement and you're wholesaling, talk to me. And another thing, wholesalers, you want to be honest, you need to have the contract to market the property publicly. Okay? I'm going to encourage, Brandon made a great post on one of our groups, but he said, hey, have you ever seen people say, hey, looking for cash buyers, put your email below. I can't tell you how many times I've signed up for wholesalers deals, through their buyers list, because I'm always wanting to get on their buyers list, but there's nothing ever gets sent out, things along those lines, and then all of a sudden they have 100, emails, and it's one of those things. One of the best things is when I see a deal, I'll say this, whenever we have a deal for sale, that's when we get so many buyers added to our buyers list, because they come out of the woodworks. So that is a great opportunity. I see when people add those, asking for people's email address, a lot of times just a simple search in the group could give them 200 plus emails. And so one of the things is, for another marketing tip is, especially if you're a wholesaler, daisy chaining. What a daisy chain is, oh my gosh, I need a board for this.
I know what it is when it comes to electricity. But...
Electricity? Is it legal to do a daisy chain?
Yes.
So look, I'm just gonna go with it. All right, so we've got, you didn't know I was gonna spell right there, didn't you? So we've got a seller who has a contract with a wholesaler, and let's just call this person John Doe. So John is then going to market the property to some buyers. So if you're not familiar with wholesalers, it's someone who gets a property under contract. I'm going to encourage you to be honest with sellers and say, first of all, you want to make sure that you're fully disclosing things that you're doing. So a lot of times we'll say this. Now, keep in mind that I am a cash buyer. Hey, either we're going to buy this deal or one of our partners is going to buy the deal. Does this still work for you? Because some people say, no, if you're not the one buying it, I don't want to do this deal. Okay, I understand. Does anyone have any questions about that? Because what you don't want is to say, hey, I'm buying this property. We had this happen earlier this year. I've seen this happen all the time. Hey, I'll buy your property, get under contract, with no intention of buying the contract, buying the property, because they're trying to go look for buyers to buy the deal from them so they can make a quick spread. And that person's packed up their bags, packed up their house, and they're getting ready to move because someone's buying their house. And, there's contractual deadlines and things like that. And they're leaving people vulnerable because they come back, oh, I didn't find a buyer, I'm going to have to cancel. So you want to make sure there's a level that you're honestly, dealing with sellers here. there's a level here that you want to make sure that you have the property under contract yourself, because you don't want to act like a realtor, and you don't want to be saying, hey, I have this house for sale. Well, do you own the house? No. Do you have a real estate license to sell this person's house? No. Then you don't have a house for sale. You do have an opportunity or a contract. So let's just say wholesaler John is going to sell that deal, and he's going to find a buyer, and the buyer is going to pay him to take his position in the contract. That is effectively a wholesale transaction. You want to make sure, again, that you're selling the contract. But what if, let's just say, Jane Doe reaches out to the wholesaler and says, hey, I'm interested in buying the property. But Jane is actually just trying to get started in real estate. She's trying to get out, doing some wholesale deals. But in reality, what Jane is wanting to do is to find buyers, so she's just doing it out here. You want to make sure that you're not doing, like going to someone and saying, hey, I'm going to buy, when you don't have the intention to buy, because that can contractually be fraud, and then you don't want to be misleading. And daisy chains, the problem is say this is me, and Jane comes to me and she says, hey, I have an opportunity, are you interested? I don't really know Jane, but Jane, I'm like, okay, talk to me about this opportunity, because I'm always looking for these opportunities. And Jane says, tells me about the details of the deal. And let's say John's under contract for $100,000 for the house, and he's going to sell it to a buyer for $105,000 to make $105,000. And Jane says, hey, I've got this deal for $110,000. Okay? Because she thinks, hey, I'm under contract to buy for $105,000. I'm just going to sell to someone. The problem here is, so many times this has happened, and so a lot of times what will happen is Jane isn't under contract with John, but is coming to me because they think they can make the transaction happen, or Jane is not direct to seller. So, for example, when I need to find out when was these termites treated, or did this house flood in Katrina, or whatever the question may be that a legitimate buyer may have, how long do you think it might take to get to here? So, daisy chain looks like that. Make my way myself. The reason why it's often frowned upon is because it's often not done with honesty and transparency. It's often not done right. So I often recommend that Jane go to John and say, hey, John, I'm another wholesaler. I have really solid buyers. If I find a buyer for this deal, will you be open to joint venturing with me? And a joint venture is a partnership. And so at that point, you can then partner in the contract and do deals together. And so a lot of times this is an issue because, for example, I get an email from John saying, hey, 123 Main Street's for sale for $105,000. And then all of a sudden, Jane sends me a text and says, hey, look at this deal. It's I'm asking $110,000. And so I'm going to be, confused who actually has control of the deal. Does that make sense? And I'm also going to be wondering who is going to make this deal, help me make this deal happen. Because, for example, if I've got questions, if I need to go see the property, if I need X, Y, Z, I'm worried about control. Because if I'm going to put time, effort, and money to close this deal, I need to make sure it's viable. Any questions before I take out my masterpiece?
Can I just add to the thing I see a lot of is people, not quite a daisy chain, but they're wholesalers who enter into a contract with a property listed on the MLS and then try to wholesale that. I've seen it all the time now, and that's
so deals that are on the MLS. So can you wholesale a deal on MLS? Yes. Should you be wholesaling a deal in MLS? Or there's a lot of variables to that. So here's one of the things is, again, if you're not being honest, if you are going to the agent and say, hey, I'm a cash buyer buying this property, and I am going to be buying this property to buy it. Well, whenever you go ahead, you want to get away from anything that's like a sleight of a hand. Does that make sense? Because at the end of the day, this industry is small, and you want to lead. You want to be a good person that does good business in this industry because it gets around very quickly when you don't. Does that make sense? You have a question?
I had a call today from a seller who's super motivated. His house is on the market. He wants to get rid of that house as soon as possible. He's willing to take a discount, it looks like a great deal, and I told him, I said, look, I do houses, I do deals that are off market, so I don't go through real estate agents. Well, the real estate agent, family member, he's not gonna, I'll deal with him. But I'm still going,
So here's one of those things is, hey, we're happy to deal with the real estate agent. First of all, when a seller is under contract with a real estate agent, contractually, there's things in their contract that may state that they may not be able to be in touch with you. So first of all, you need to figure out what that listing agreement says. Sometimes it allows them to, sometimes it does not. For example, sometimes it can actually be they can default on their listing agreement contract if they accept an offer from me. So for example, there's been times I've made offers on properties and I didn't know it was on, or I'm not gonna say this. I went, for example, there was recently a deal that driving for dollars, I found it, did not see, there was no sign out front. I hunted down the owner, called them, they met me at the property and we got talking, and then it wasn't until the very end that I learned it was on the market. And I was like, oh, okay, we need to have a whole different conversation now. Because now we need to go through and involve that part. First of all, who's gonna pay the real estate commission? Because contractually, they have an obligation to that realtor because of that contract. The other thing is, look, there's times that I've bought deals as a buyer and as a wholesaler with realtors involved. I just got everyone to the table and talked about how I can solve the problem. But at the same time, I'm not doing that sleight of hand, so another thing too though is, two things, a confused mind says no. I have done classes with realtors to teach them about what off-market, like how to wholesale, what wholesalers do, what value they bring to the marketplace. Many times, they're going to say, that's illegal, you can't do that. If you're selling a house and you're not licensed, yes. But there are ways you can do it legally. And a big part of that is the confused mind. If they don't understand it, they're going to say, no, you can't, that's illegal, you can't do this. But I've actually talked with LREG, I've talked with brokers and showed them, and they understand. It's actually often done in commercial real estate. But another thing is, so first of all, confused minds say no. And so at the end of the day, if they're not on your side, they're gonna, I'll tell you this, piss off the wrong realtor or broker, they may actually go after you. For example, if they found out that you had no intention of buying the property and you said you went under contract to buy the property. For example, no intention or no access to available funds or anything like that. So there's a term to where it's called good faith, like going under contract in good faith. So there's a level of that. The second part to it is I have made more allies by collaborating with people, working with people, and that comes with being transparent and honest, rather than saying, well, they don't need to know my business. And what I've done is I've actually done more deals whenever I've gone at that approach. And so maybe it's a family member. So the biggest thing is say, hey, this is something that I do. So a lot of times what I do is I'm not going to say this is wholesaling and I'm going to draw them on a figure on a board. No, but I'm going to say, hey, something that I do is that I do look for opportunities. I get them under contract, and then I go ahead and I sell the position in the contract to someone else. What it does is it says, hey, we're going to get under contract for $70,000 between you and I. That number works for you, right? Now what I'm going to go do is I am going to either go raise the money or I'm going to go find a partner. So for us, that's what we do. We do private lenders, and so we'll go raise the money, or we have lines of credit. We have it available ourselves. And I said, or I'm going to go to some of these investors who don't have the time like I do to meet great people like you and help solve problems, who are looking for a deal. It still gets you your $70,000. Are you interested in that model? My problem, if the problem needs to be solved, the problem needs to be solved, right? So that's one of those things. Now the question is, if it's on the market and it's not selling on its own right now, I have a red flag for that, because stuff is flying off the shelf right now on the market. Realtors, would you guys agree? Yeah. If you have a buyer's agent right now, you're freaking out. Generally, it's either maybe mismarketed. So, like for example, I know properties that have sat on the market and they did not sell when they really were a deal because they were not marketed properly. For example, earlier this year I did a webinar with my friend Mitzi Childress, Mitzi Diane. How many of you guys were able to see that one earlier this year? So Mitzi's out of Texas. Mitzi's killing in the game. Mitzi got a $400,000 assignment fee. Remember how I said $5,000? Like between the 100 to the 105. She got $400,000. You want to know how she did the deal? There was a multifamily deal that was on the MLS. They listed with a family member who had only ever sold residential property before. So they did not understand commercial real estate. And so therefore she saw it, her team saw it immediately pop up. She got it under contract because it was not priced properly. And so there was an opportunity there. That number worked for the seller because obviously the seller in the, worked with the agent to get it listed. She gets it under contract and she has the ability, she's a buyer herself, but she knew buyers who would buy it at, and so she knew how to take something. For example, she knew how to take that property and package it better, and she made money that way, $400,000. She ended up having to creatively do it. She actually made like so much, like $150,000, and then the rest was like owner finance with the deal. But for those of you who last year got to hear my friend Corey Thompson, he's the one who paid the $400,000. So sometimes it's mismarketed. Why is it not selling on MLS? Because there's historically low inventory right now. So my question is, why? Is it not really a deal? Is it not marketed? Why?
I've been looking at that.
Because you almost you can almost just, as long as you're breathing and you can click submit on the MLS right now, stuff is getting activity. Lastly, before I give it off to him, because I really need to, grab my phone, it's on the watch. It's been a long day. So, what are some other do's and don'ts that you've seen with marketing? Anyone want to contribute? Anyone seen anything? Because I really believe that maybe you guys have seen some things that I haven't mentioned tonight, or just things that I may be forgetting. Justin?
I find like if you anchor in the price, like that value at the top of the advertisement, that helps. So if you can just $10,000 lower the comp in the area.
So you're not the highest priced property or the highest priced rental.
Yeah, you just kind of anchor that in right at the top. I find that helps a lot.
Okay, we'll do it. I just realized what time it was. Real quick, on the commercial side, we may do a webinar on the commercial side. Here's something. Paul and I were going to make an offer on, this is for an 80-unit apartment complex we made an offer on. Here's the paperwork to just figure out if the numbers work. So, on commercial, there's a lot that goes into it, and so that is why things are often not marketed well. There's not enough information and things along those lines. So if you're interested in commercial, understand that we're going to need to tackle that another night because there's a lot that goes into it. And it's not, I'm not going to say for the faint of heart, but it's not something to be taken lightly. So, look, I am going to thank two gentlemen tonight who came early and who helped pit these chairs out. Here's the two books. I always think at giving out books and picking who to choose. But look, I know I went over tonight. Did this help anyone? Did this give you guys any extra kind of insight to it? Look, this is just residential, house packages, commercial, land developments. Deals like that we've marketed are a lot more complex. And honestly, Paul could really, really go into that a lot longer. So understand how you market a deal, it really can change the way that you can sell the deal. So look, thank you guys for coming out. Take some chips, some crackers, whatever on the way out. If you want to join any of these Facebook groups, you guys are welcome to. If you want to grab one of the vendor cards out on the way out, if you're looking for title companies, CPAs, things like that. But thank you guys. I hope you guys have a great Christmas, a great New Year, and we will see you guys in January 12th. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.